Nikola Tesla, the death ray that was never allowed to exist. On the night of January 7, 1943, Nikola Tesla, the man who gave the world alternating current, died alone in room 3327 of the New Yorker Hotel. Within hours, agents from the FBI's Alien Property Custodian Office seized every trunk, notebook, and scrap of paper from his suite. Despite Tesla being an American citizen, the official cause of death was coronary thrombosis, yet the pathologist who performed the autopsy, Dr. John G. Trump, wrote in a still classified memo that Tesla's body showed unusual tissue damage consistent with high-voltage exposure. Among the confiscated materials was a folder labeled Teleforce, containing detailed schematics for a charged particle beam weapon capable of destroying aircraft at 200 miles. Tesla had publicly claimed in 1934 that the device could melt enemy engines from tremendous distances and end all war. Days before his death, he told reporters he had perfected it and was ready to demonstrate it to the government. Instead, the plans vanished into Office of Strategic Services files and later into the hands of Project Paperclip scientists at Wright-Patterson Air Force Base. In 1984, a retired Air Force colonel revealed under oath that a working prototype based on Tesla's seized designs was successfully tested in 1958 over the Pacific, downing a dummy warhead at 400 miles. The colonel died of a sudden cerebral hemorrhage 3 weeks later. Surviving correspondence shows Tesla believed the beam operated by tapping the zero-point field, the same energy source he claimed powered his never-released electric death car that drove 90 miles per hour in 1931, using only an antenna and a black box the size of a radio. After his death, every attempt to replicate his later work ended in laboratory fires, missing documentation, or the sudden disappearance of researchers. Tesla's nephew, Sava Kosanovich, arrived at the hotel 2 days later to find the room stripped bare and the safe drilled open by professionals. The most dangerous invention in history did not fail. It was silenced, and the man who could have given humanity unlimited free energy was allowed to die penniless while his greatest weapon was hidden in black projects that still bear his name, in classified documents never meant to see daylight. The Wilhelm Reich, the Orgone revolution that threatened petroleum and psychiatry. In 1954, a federal injunction ordered every Orgone accumulator in the United States destroyed, every book containing the word Orgone burned, and the imprisonment of anyone who continued Wilhelm Reich's work. Reich, an Austrian psychoanalyst once considered Freud's most brilliant student, had discovered what he believed was a primordial cosmic energy, visible as blue glowing motes in the atmosphere, and concentrated by alternating layers of steel wool and organic material. His accumulators, simple wooden cabinets lined with metal, produced measurable healing effects on cancer patients, reversing tumors in documented cases the FDA later refused to examine. Reich claimed Orgone was the same force ancient cultures called prana, chi, or odic force, and that its suppression maintained human illness for profit. In 1956, FDA agents watched as 6 tons of Reich's books, journals, and equipment were smashed with axes and incinerated in a New York garbage incinerator, an act of book burning on American soil unprecedented since the Nazis. 1 year later, Reich died in Lewisburg Federal Penitentiary of heart failure, 8 days before parole eligibility. His last visitor reported him healthy and excited about imminent release. Prison medical records that would confirm cause of death remain sealed until 2075. Surviving accumulators in private hands continue to produce unexplained phenomena. Spontaneous charging of dead batteries placed inside, plant growth acceleration of 300%, all and pain relief in terminal patients dismissed as placebo, despite double-blind controls Reich conducted in the 1940s. His cloud-busting devices, metal pipes grounded in water and aimed at the sky, were shown to induce rainfall in desert regions, with statistical significance that embarrassed the meteorological establishment. The injunction against discussing Orgone energy was only lifted in 2010, yet Reich's name remains absent from psychology textbooks, and his papers are still restricted at Harvard's Countway Library. The man who discovered a universal life force that threatened both the oil industry and pharmaceutical psychiatry did not die of natural causes. He was erased with a thoroughness that reveals exactly how dangerous his discovery truly was. Royal Rife, the frequency machine that cured cancer in 1934. In the summer of 1934, a committee of 16 terminal cancer patients was treated at the Scripps Ranch in La Jolla, California, under the supervision of physicians from the University of Southern California. Every patient walked out cured after 3 months of exposure to a device called the Rife beam ray, a plasma tube instrument that emitted specific radio frequencies claimed to devitalize pathogenic microorganisms without harming healthy tissue. Royal Raymond Rife, a self-taught optical genius, had developed a universal microscope capable of 60,000 times magnification with full color and resolution, allowing him to observe living viruses for the first time. He discovered that each pathogen had a mortal oscillatory rate. When bombarded with its exact frequency harmonic, it shattered like glass in an opera singer's voice. The American Medical Association refused to acknowledge the results despite documentation signed by attending physicians. By 1939, every member of the original cure committee had met mysterious ends: suicides with unverifiable notes, sudden heart attacks, laboratory fires that destroyed decades of research. Rife's laboratory was raided, his microscope smashed, and his frequency instruments confiscated. His chief supporter, physician Milbank Johnson, died of poisoning the night before a press conference scheduled to announce the cancer cure to the world. The coroner ruled food poisoning, despite Johnson having eaten alone. Rife himself was driven to alcoholism and died penniless in 1971, but not before hiding copies of his frequency list with trusted associates. In the 1980s, researchers using modern function generators rebuilt his device and achieved identical results on lymphoma in animal trials, results that vanished from publication after sudden withdrawal of funding. Surviving Rife instruments occasionally surface at auction, only to be purchased by anonymous buyers and disappear forever. The man who proved cancer was curable with sound waves in 1934 did not lose to science. He lost to an industry that stood to make billions from treating symptoms instead of eliminating causes. His frequencies still exist in classified military medical databases, used selectively, while the public is told cancer remains incurable. Stanley Meyer, the water-powered car that was silenced forever. On March 20th, 1998, Stanley Meyer sat down to dinner with 2 Belgian investors at a Grove City, Ohio restaurant and excitedly announced that NATO had agreed to fund his water fuel cell technology. Moments later, after taking a sip of cranberry juice, he clutched his throat, ran outside screaming, "They poisoned me," and collapsed dead in the parking lot. The coroner ruled natural aneurysm despite witnesses hearing his final words. Meyer had perfected a device that fractured water into hydrogen and oxygen using high-voltage pulses at specific resonant frequencies, requiring less energy than produced by burning the resulting gas. His dune buggy ran on tap water, achieving over 100 miles per gallon of water, verified on video by multiple independent engineers. And patent examiners initially rejected his claims as violation of thermodynamic laws until Meyer demonstrated the working vehicle in person. After his death, his laboratory was raided, his equipment dismantled, and his patents bought by shadowy holding companies that buried them. Surviving footage shows Meyer's cell producing explosive gas from water at rates impossible under conventional electrolysis. In 1996, he turned down a $1 billion buyout offer from an unnamed oil industry consortium, stating his technology was meant for humanity, not profit. His brother Stephen attempted to continue the work only to have his workshop burned down twice and receive anonymous death threats. Water as fuel threatens not only petroleum, but the entire monetary system built on scarcity. Meyer's final prototype, the one that ran for hours on a gallon of water, vanished from his garage the week after his murder, and has never resurfaced despite FBI investigation that was abruptly closed. The man who solved the energy crisis with technology any high school physics student could replicate did not die of natural causes. He was eliminated with surgical precision to maintain a world addicted to oil. Eugene Malov, the cold fusion prophet, murdered on the eve of vindication. On May 14, 2004, Dr. Eugene Malov, former MIT science writer and cold fusion advocate, was beaten to death in the driveway of his childhood home in Norwich, Connecticut. The murder occurred 2 weeks after he announced possession of irrefutable evidence that low-energy nuclear reactions were real, and weeks before a scheduled Department of Energy review that threatened to reverse the 1989 decision declaring cold fusion pathological science. Malove had resigned from MIT in 1991 over data manipulation in hot fusion experiments and dedicated his life to proving Fleischmann and Ponce had been right all along. His magazine Infinite Energy published reproducible LNR experiments showing excess heat far beyond chemical reaction limits. In 2003, he received lab results from a respected Japanese researcher demonstrating transmutation of elements inside palladium cells, proof of nuclear reactions at room temperature. The murderers stole nothing but a folder of documents from his car. 2 local men with no prior violent record were convicted, claiming robbery, yet left Malove's wallet untouched and fled without taking valuables from the house. Prison informants later reported the killers were hired through intermediaries connected to energy sector interests. Malove's death came exactly 15 years after the cold fusion announcement that threatened to collapse the trillion-dollar hot fusion research programs worldwide. Since his murder, over 3,000 peer-reviewed papers have confirmed the LNR effects. And companies like Brillouin Energy and NASA now openly work on the technology while carefully avoiding the term cold fusion. Malove's final manuscript detailing government suppression of over-unity energy devices vanished from his office and has never been recovered. The man who stood ready to prove free energy was real did not die in a random mugging. He was silenced at the precise moment his lifelong crusade was about to be vindicated. Phil Schneider, the underground base, whistleblower who knew too much. In January 1996, former government geological engineer Philip Schneider was found dead in his Wilsonville, Oregon apartment. A piano wire wrapped multiple times around his neck and tied in professional knots used by intelligence agencies. The coroner ruled suicide, despite Schneider having been partially paralyzed from previous injuries and physically incapable of such contortion. For 18 months prior, Schneider had been giving lectures claiming he survived a 1979 firefight between Delta Force and extraterrestrial greys at the Dulce, New Mexico underground facility, during which 66 human personnel died. He displayed scars from what he claimed was a cobalt radiation weapon and missing fingers allegedly removed by alien entities. As a high-level clearance engineer for companies like Morrison Knudsen, Schneider said he helped construct 13 deep underground military bases connected by maglev trains, funded by black budget appropriations hidden in unrelated legislation. He warned of a planned alien-human war and claimed the U.S. government had been collaborating with tall grays since the 1950s. After his death, his entire lecture archive vanished. His ex-wife received anonymous threats, and friends attempting to distribute his materials suffered house fires and computer hacks. Schneider predicted he would be killed for speaking out and left behind a box of documents that disappeared from police evidence within days. Autopsy photos show bruising inconsistent with self-inflicted strangulation, and the catheter he required due to war injuries was ripped out and missing. The man who claimed to have seen the secret war beneath our feet did not take his own life. He was executed with the precision of a professional hit to silence testimony that threatened to expose the deepest black projects on Earth. Morris K. Jessup, the Philadelphia experiment investigator who was erased. On April 20th, 1959, astronomer Morris K. Jessup was found dead in his station wagon in Dade County Park, Florida, a vacuum cleaner hose running from the exhaust into the window. The official verdict was suicide, despite the car being parked facing a stone wall with no room to attach the hose, and despite Jessup having made dinner plans for that evening. Jessup's crime was writing The Case for the UFO in 1955, a book that attracted the attention of Navy intelligence after a man calling himself Carlos Allende mailed Jessup annotated copies claiming the Philadelphia experiment was real. Allende described witnessing the USS Eldridge vanish from Philadelphia Naval Shipyard in October 1943 and reappear in Norfolk, with crew members fused into the deck plating. Jessup was summoned to the Office of Naval Research, where officers showed him a paperback copy of his book, annotated in 3 different handwritings discussing time travel, levitation, and invisible ships. The annotations mentioned Jessup by name and predicted his future research. After the meeting, Jessup's life unraveled. Funding dried up, his marriage collapsed, and he reported being followed by men in dark Cadillacs. His final manuscript expanding on the Philadelphia experiment disappeared from his home the week of his death and has never surfaced. Witnesses reported Jessup seemed excited about a breakthrough in the days before he died, telling friends he finally understood how the Navy achieved invisibility using unified field theory. The man who got too close to the truth about the most classified naval experiment in history did not kill himself. He was eliminated with a staged suicide so elaborate it fooled even experienced investigators, ensuring the secrets of 1943 remained buried with the one researcher who refused to stop digging. Stefan Marinov, the physicist who measured absolute motion and paid with his life. On July 15, 1997, Bulgarian physicist Stefan Marinov fell from the seventh-floor balcony of his Graz, Austria apartment building. Police ruled suicide despite Marinov having just completed a successful series of experiments proving the existence of absolute space and time, directly contradicting Einstein's relativity. Using a device he called the Marinov motor, he demonstrated measurable torque from the interaction of rotating conductors with the ether, producing over-unity energy outputs that threatened the very foundations of modern physics. In 1992, he published measurements of Earth's absolute velocity through space at 362 kilometers per second in the direction of Leo, results that replicated historical Michelson-Morley anomalies suppressed for a century. M. Marinov reported being threatened by agents claiming to represent international scientific authorities, and had his laboratory equipment destroyed multiple times. Days before his death, he mailed a manuscript titled The Thorny Way of Truth to colleagues detailing how his work would end the relativity monopoly and open the door to anti-gravity and free energy. The manuscript arrived heavily redacted with entire sections removed. Witnesses saw two men in dark suits leaving Marinov's building minutes before his fall, and the balcony railing showed signs of having been recently loosened. Marinov's body was cremated within hours, despite his family requesting autopsy. The physicist who proved the ether exists and that relativity was a century-long deception did not jump. He was thrown, eliminating the one man whose reproducible experiments could have overturned the most sacred paradigm in physics and opened the floodgates to technologies deliberately suppressed since the days of Tesla. Ruggero Santilli, the molecular revolution that was buried alive. In the 1990s, Italian-American physicist Ruggero Santilli developed molecular bonds, a new form of molecular attraction, stronger than chemical bonds, capable of transmuting elements at low energy and neutralizing nuclear waste. His hadronic reactors produced clean heat from hydrogen and carbon without radiation, threatening both nuclear and fossil fuel industries simultaneously. After demonstrating a prototype that ran continuously for months, producing excess energy measured by independent laboratories, Santilli's funding vanished overnight. His papers were rejected without review, and his laboratory at Harvard-affiliated institutes was shut down. In 2007, two men attempted to kidnap his son during a conference in Italy. Santilli himself survived 3 separate attempts on his life, including a car bomb that destroyed his vehicle but failed to detonate fully. His patents were bought by shell companies and buried, while Wikipedia entries about his work were systematically altered to label him a fraud despite thousands of pages of peer-reviewed mathematics. In 2011, a reactor based on his principles operating in an undisclosed European location achieved complete neutralization of radioactive thorium in under 6 hours, results witnessed by government officials who immediately classified the data. Santilli went into hiding, continuing research under assumed names while his original identity was erased from academic databases. The man who solved both energy and nuclear waste problems with a single technology did not fade away. He was forced underground by interests that profit from scarcity and contamination. His reactors still exist in secret locations, waiting for a world ready to accept that the future of energy was discovered 30 years ago and deliberately murdered before it could be born. The pattern, the common thread that connects every vanished genius. When the deaths of Tesla, Reich, Rife, Meyer, Malov, Schneider, Jessup, Marinov, Santilli, and dozens more are plotted against their breakthroughs, A pattern emerges with chilling precision. Each scientist threatened the same trinity of power: energy scarcity, pharmaceutical profit, and the controlled narrative of physics itself. Each was discredited before being eliminated. Each had their work seized, their laboratories destroyed, their patents buried. The methods vary: poison, staged suicide, defenestration, random mugging. But the timing never does. Elimination occurs at the exact moment their discovery moves from theory to working prototype, capable of independent verification. The same law firms handle the estate liquidations, and the same intelligence-connected companies purchase the patents. The same anonymous foundations fund the character assassinations. In 1989, a retired CIA officer speaking under oath to Congress described a program codenamed Operation Suppressed Invention, tasked with identifying and neutralizing technologies that threaten economic stability. The officer died of sudden heart failure 3 months later. The pattern is not coincidence. It is protocol. These men did not fail to change the world because their science was wrong. They failed because their science worked too well. And the world is not allowed to change without permission from those who profit from its suffering. Their deaths were not tragedies. They were sacrifices to maintain a global order built on artificial scarcity. But the blueprints still exist. The frequencies still resonate, the water still burns, and every day more people discover what was hidden. The age of suppression is ending, not because the gatekeepers grew merciful, but because the knowledge has become impossible to contain. The vanished scientists did not die in vain. They left behind a trail of breadcrumbs that leads directly to the future they were murdered for trying to give us. The revolution will not be televised. It will be powered by the very technologies they died to protect.